There we go. And we're live, Matthew. Are you going to do the music or are you just going to have us get going? Did you forget the music, Matthew?
Uh-oh. Is it not doing the music?
We don't hear the music.
Oh no. It says it's even saying it's sharing sound and everything. Let me try it one more time, Teepa. There we go. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start it over again. The button was clicked for the share sound. Now I'll watch for the thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up, team, if you hear it, or a thumbs down if you don't. All right, here we go.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to help us spread Teepa's positive approach message around the world.
Well, speaking of around the world, yeah, Matthew, good job. We may have a tiny bit of production issue because Matthew is not in Kansas City. He's not in Chicago. He's not in New York City. Matthew, you are in?
I'm in the UK with you, Teepa.
You're in London, Matthew.
That's I'm sorry.
That's the city. That's the city you're in.
The detailed, you got it. So
I gave you hints what we were going for there, Matthew. Now, how many hours have you been up consecutively?
Okay, so now do naps count like as a break in time for like actually?
No, that's not what we usually talk about because you are not living with advanced state dementia. So no, you should be getting a 6 to 8 hour window of deep recovery sleep. So how many hours has it been since a period of fairly deep recovery sleep?
So Tuesday morning, I was up around 5:40 a.m. and I have not had deep recovery sleep since then.
Okay. So we're going on 24 plus another 8. No, more than 8. So 10. So 34 hours.
So when you say it that way, Teepa, it does sound like a lot. It sounds like a lot of time.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like a lot of time.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like it though. Why? I'm curious. Why doesn't it feel like it? What's the?
Yeah, because you're not in a bad part in your circadian. When you hit the bottom of your circadian, and what else have you done to make it sort of feel different?
Oh, okay. So we've been active. Like we did a whole lot of walking, and it felt like a hike, literally, with our luggage and everything. So that really got the blood pumping and going.
Yeah.
For sure.
We walked we walked uphill for about 3/4 of a mile or a mile almost uphill. You were pushing and pulling, messing with 2 major suitcases. So you got a pretty good cardiac workout in the middle of it. And that reset, which is one of the things people living with dementia have a really hard time doing. They will burn the fuel, but then they can't reset the clock. So with Matthew, he's bought himself some functional time. If you keep cheating like this, though, your brain says, and I can't keep doing this very well. And so Matthew knows that he's getting close to the edge of this thing. But fortunately, we have somebody who didn't leave home. And hopefully she got some sleep last night. And those are 2 women with us. We've got Rachel. Rachel, how long has it been since you got some sleep?
Oh, it's been a couple hours.
Because it's fairly early for you.
Yeah, it's early in the day for me.
Yeah, what time do you usually like to get up? Because you're what we call a night owl. And we're going to be talking.
I don't know if I'm a real night owl, but definitely more of a deer or what was that bird? The bird.
A meadowlark.
Meadowlark.
An afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, so you like to be more active in the afternoon.
Afternoon, evenings.
Yeah. So this is just right on the borderline for you of getting good.
Not that I don't do stuff in the morning, but yeah.
Right. But this is your preferred time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cheryl, if I remember right, you're sort of an early bird.
I am more of a deer Teepa.
Oh, you're a deer
actually.
too. Okay, so for
Yeah.
those of you out there who aren't familiar with our terminology, different people have different circadian patterns. So we have early birds who like to get up real early, be real active, but by about 3 in the afternoon, they're about done and they need to get back to a nest and settle in. And they don't really want to go back out and they want things to start quieting down so they can sort of recharge batteries, and they go to bed fairly early and get up really early. Then we have our meadowlarks, who are people who really have their more active time in the midday to early evening time. That's when they're at their prime. And they like to get up slow and easy, late morning kind of time, and they gradually come online. And then they're pretty active into the afternoon and evening. They want to do things and they want things to move along. And then the thing is, somewhere between 10 and 11, they start to shut it down. Now, they want that quiet transition back out, like they're quiet in. So watching TV, listening to the news, settling things up so that around midnight, maybe 1 a.m., they're ready to read and quietly slip out. And then we have our night owls, and they're active actually at night. And we also have what we call mice. Night owls are loners, but mice like to gather together and be together because they feel safer that way. And that's when they stay busy and active at night, but they like to socialize. They like to be with others. And the owls want to be on their own, but they're up at night monitoring, keeping track of stuff, sort of supervising sort of the world. And then we have the deer, who are active early in the morning and later in the evening, and they need a siesta in the middle of the day. So some of the situations that we come up with in dementia have to do with different circadian patterns. And when we don't match up, or dementia robs us of our preferred pattern, it's making us hard. It's hard for us to get our pattern, keep our pattern. It will result in distress on everybody's part. So we're going to kick off this evening talking a little bit about some cases, because Rachel, we have some problems to solve, I hear tell.
Surprise, surprise. So I thought, Teepa, while you're kind of talking through things, it might be really helpful to talk a little bit about the combination of MS, multiple sclerosis, and dementia, because I don't know about you, but I'm finding that we're having a lot of combinations of things. So it's not just one, it's not just the other.
Yeah.
And I think Cheryl talked to a husband whose wife is, I think, in her kind of late middle kind of age, and around Cheryl's age, I think. And she has MS.
How old is she going to say?
That was clever how you worked your way around late, middle, late, well, around how old Cheryl is. Not old like Teepa and Jeffrey.
So I thought maybe it would be helpful to, because he's not really getting any help or support from medical community, and they're kind of blaming everything on, oh, it's just MS. Oh, it's just MS. Oh, it's just MS. So I thought maybe you'd be a good person to talk about that.
Okay, so let's talk about autoimmune diseases. And MS is one of those diseases that we believe sort of has something to do with the body turning on itself. And in MS, what happens is the myelin on the nerves, which is the coating, sort of like you have electrical wires and you have coating on the electrical wires so that the electrical wires are not exposed. Because when you expose the electrical wires, they sort of don't do the same job, because when they're coated or insulated, the only places that the firing happens is at the end of the synapses. But when you don't have coating, the firing sort of messes up and goes haywire and can be overactive or underactive. So when you develop MS, what starts to happen is the myelin sheaths of the central nervous system are starting to not work right. They're being destroyed. It's taking away the myelin sheaths. And so what happens is usually you'll see some changes in mobility. You'll see changes in skill and abilities in the hands, strength, talent. Unfortunately, it's happening in the central nervous system. So it's estimated with some of the more recent studies that somewhere around 40% of people who develop MS. Now, the MS is in your central nervous system, but affects your peripheral system. So it's all the nerves within your body. All of the nerves are being impacted by MS. Now, there are different forms, different degrees of MS. In some of them, there'll be a repeating pattern of attack. In some, it's a sort of a one attack, and then it eases off, and you don't tend to have a lot more. But for people who have repeated MS episodes, their risk of developing dementia is estimated somewhere around 40% of folks can start to develop brain changes, brain function changes, not just the myelin sheaths, but actually the brain cells are starting to show shifts and changes. And so the kind of dementia that where we'll see the changes is often in the prefrontal cortex. So people will do things like they'll think they can do things that it's not safe for them to do. I mean, so I can drive an electric wheelchair, I'm fine. And so they will make a mistake driving an electric wheelchair and actually have a major accident with it, or run someone over, or back up over something. But if I'm also able to drive a motor vehicle with modifications, I think I'm doing a really good job driving. But I'm starting to have issues with the ability to see in front, see behind, judge how far something is, how quickly I need to make a change. We can also have episodes of emotional distress where I can't control the impulse. So when I get pretty impulsive, and so I say or do things that surprise people and frustrate them, because I know what I'm doing. And so I can get really angry or it's not fair. None of this is fair. That stupid doctor, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And so a sense of people aren't treating me fairly. And so it's because my brain tells me that what I'm doing is different than what they're doing. And what they're doing, they're being unfair to me. They're not being helpful to me. And I deserve more than that. And so the kinds of mistakes often that people who have a dementia that comes with MS could be a very emotionally fraught kind of thing, and a very risky kind of thing, because people think they can do things, and truly their bodies and their brains are tricking them into believing they have a capacity that at that time they don't have. And so the risk of making mistakes and having accidents is quite high. And people might do things like try to walk or try to run or try to do things, or it could be involve motorized, or getting in a shower, or scheduling a trip, or doing all kinds of things that I think I should be able to do. And I have done, and I can do this. And then when it comes to doing it, it's not possible to do. And that's a really hard, awful moment, because then it feels like somebody must have done something to make this impossible. It's because, and then the brain starts to try to make up the reason why that could be the case. And it's not related to me. Does that? So Rachel, that's, and Cheryl, that's the kind of thing that I would say off the top about MS and a dementia.
Teepa, I would like to say that I would like to say hello to Anthony, and thank you for joining us, Anthony. Anthony, we just shared just a little wee bit, and Teepa was just explaining. I am Cheryl, by the way, that we had our conversation over the phone. So Teepa was just sharing a little bit about MS and dementia.
So yeah, and that I want to be clear is the MS dementia relationship for dementia related to MS. But people living with MS are at risk for developing other dementias, just like anyone in the world is at risk. So we could be talking Alzheimer's or Lewy body or frontal temporal dementia, more of a standard quote unquote dementia. But we also know that for people with MS, there are people with MS who develop a specific dementia that's related to their MS, and it fits in with their other symptoms. And it's sort of like the other one is lupus, is another example. ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, is another one where we will see dementia associated with it. And it's different than a standard dementia. The others, anyway. So Anthony, did any of that seem to ring true or have any merit in your situation, or is your situation different than that? And you're muted. So if you can unmute, that'll make it a little easier. We might need, I don't know if Matthew can ask. Let's see, there we go.
Okay, is that
now you're
better?
in.
Sorry, I'm
That's
not
it. Now
that
you got
familiar
it.
with Zoom. I apologize.
It's okay. You did great.
I'm sorry I missed that conversation because that's exactly what I'm dealing with. My wife has MS, progressive MS with early onset dementia.
Okay. And so are most of her symptoms, would you say, having to do with impulse control, being illogical or irrational about what is being proposed and what is realistic, making choices that are consistent with what she said she wanted before versus something really different, or having difficulty with sequencing, either getting started or sequencing through things?
All the above, all the above.
Okay.
And I feel a lot of the medical staff is being dismissive about those symptoms.
That's unfortunate. How is her language doing at the moment? Are you starting to notice shifts in language skills yet?
Yeah, on enunciation and a little bit of slurring, but I'm not sure if that's related to right now she has a UTI. So I'm not sure if it's related to that or if it's just related to the latest. She seems to have taken a step back and maybe her baseline is lowered, but I'm in the process of getting that determined right now through PT, OT, ST.
Okay, so one of the things that we know that prefrontal cortex for many people, when they develop a dementia, that is a very common place for there to be notable differences as the changes get more profound. The idea that, well, people with MS, they have cognitive changes. It's like, well, that's one thing, but to have this degree of progression of changes speaks to something that's not typical, but it does happen with MS. But it's important to recognize that's not just MS. She has brain changes that we're going to have to support in a unique way, but they're legitimate brain changes. And this isn't like if we adjust her medication or we do this or we do that, it'll go away. This is now the pattern for your life moving forward, and it is a progression pattern.
Right. I agree 100%. That's what I'm trying to advocate for.
Yeah, good for you. Because that's at the highest level. That's what the belief set is these days. It's not like, well, yeah, you get MS and you get, you have brain changes. It's just what it is. It's like, no, this is a phenomenon that we need to support because this is a unique set of symptoms within having MS. Not everybody with MS is going to develop these symptoms. This is not a typical profile of MS. She needs really significant shifts in environment and in support personnel to help us really better support her, because otherwise this will snowball with lots of worsening of overall symptoms because she's not able to pull things together, and she'll make mistakes that are very costly for her well-being.
That's what I'm afraid of. Yes.
Yeah. So who on the group has some questions to ask or something that they want to find out with Anthony? Because Anthony, for you, what were your first tip-offs that, like, I don't think this is just straight out MS?
I'm not, well, they had early on, I believe they did diagnose her with early onset dementia, but it was almost like it was just passively written down and wrote, listed down on her, like after a visit summary. And every time I address it, they don't focus. They dismiss my concerns. They ask the standard questions: who's the president? What's the date? Do you know where you're at? And then they almost, goodbye. We'll see you on your next visit. And
how is this impacting your life every day? So Anthony, if you could identify 3 areas where this is starting to really concern you as your spouse is changing, what are the 3 areas for safety or independence that the 2 of you are most concerned about?
Well, yes, I mean, recently it was safety because I have noticed that like things where I saw her walker, it was at the bottom of the stairs. So is she trying to negotiate? She says no, and she hasn't before, but now I'm wondering if there being a change in her decision making. I think that's been the biggest impact right now. Other than that, I don't know because it's been kind of gradual and maybe it's kind of been the new normal for me over the last time. I think recently too, I think it's been harder to admit or coming to groove is kind of more of an intimacy thing, a relationship. She repeats the same things over and over. It's almost as if she's not there sometimes.
Yeah. So what you're noticing from your side of the street is sort of, she's got some surface capacity, but you're starting to wonder where's the depth that used to be there.
Yes.
And that's not a screening or assessment or support that is being offered for you and your wife. That could help you guys transition into a more supportive structure for yourselves. By giving you some skills and her some awareness, because MS, interestingly enough, when it comes and it goes, because it does, it's not a static condition.
Right.
It has these wave-like motions to it. Sometimes she could be pretty aware something is really wrong with, I have no idea why I was trying to go up the stairs. This is crazy. Why would I do that? If we had a video, she could look at the video and go, I can't believe I did that. What was I thinking? And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure. That's why I think we need to put alarm so that if you've tried to do that again, we would be there, because the last thing we want is you to fall and go back down the steps. But it gives you a space to here's data. And because MS is that wave motion, when it's a good time, it's time to look at the data, because then you guys can make mutual, choices that don't feel adversarial. Because otherwise, you being worried, it's like, well, why are you worrying? I would never go up the steps with a walker. What are you talking about? That's crazy. I wouldn't do that. I know better. And then you see the evidence and your brain goes, yeah, except, why was the walker there? Oh, don't worry about it. It was nothing. I was just looking. And it's like, oh.
I don't even think she even has that sense of awareness. That's the problem. She just has no sense that there's anything wrong. That's the other.
Ouch. Ooh.
The other problem.
That's a real problem when we have those episodes.
Right.
Yeah.
We could be on the ground and she would say, everything's fine. I'm fine. She has no awareness.
Yeah. And that's that the old term back when I was in the medical model, it would be, she's so grandiose. Everything is big. Everything is wonderful. Everything is huge. I've got it. Everything's awful. Everything's terrible. But it's extremes.
Yes.
And now I live more in the world of humans, and so she has difficulty with anything in between. She really has these extremes in thinking. And she can't hit the middle. So there's no ability when this is happening for her to see the reality. It's wonderful, it's awful, and you're stuck with, but it's here, it's gray.
Right.
Yeah. And that leaves you hanging then when you're trying to provide support.
And care, yes, exactly.
And care. And you're not getting the right support from those that could provide that to you by just labeling it as young onset or early onset dementia. It's like,
it's just the progression of the disease, right? It's just
what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, what do we do about this? It's like there are things.
And they don't even talk about the dementia. They say it's the progression of MS. Everything is blamed on MS. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think I need to address the other part of this now.
I would agree with you that you both are going to be better off if we do start addressing the dementia as a dementia and not as just a symptom of MS. That's a very different phenomena. So Cheryl, what are you thinking about
Well, I
this,
have a
'cause
question. I have
yeah.
a question for Anthony, because when we spoke, Anthony, your wife was coming out of the hospital that day. You were getting ready to pick her up after a fall, and she had been in rehab for how many weeks?
She was in an acute rehab hospital for about 5 weeks, and then she went to a subacute for about 2 weeks. And I didn't feel she was safe in these subacutes, so I took her out early. I mean, before they actually discharged her. I had her discharged, which may have been a mistake on my part, but I feel she's safer, and I was doing just as much good here
I
as she
don't
was
know.
there.
Yeah, Anthony,
Handicapped.
I want you to don't second guess yourself on that. If your gut was saying, I'm seeing things in this setting that make me super nervous about her fall risk potential, yet
Yes.
again, we just went through acute rehab, and this doesn't make sense to leave her in an environment that doesn't seem to recognize the impact of her dementia on her safety awareness in a way that makes sense. You're
Yes.
probably better tuned in to what is her risk pattern than they are.
That's how
And
I
that's
felt
why you felt
exactly.
that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So since
But
that
I'm
time,
still, I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say at that time you were a lone ranger. You were a lone ranger with no support from any other family members or anyone else. But you were looking into having a caregiver come into the home. Did that happen?
I'm still in the process. It's been a much slower process than I thought. I'm trying to get, I'm working with all the therapies, the PTSD and OT. I am trying to get vendors in here to install chair rails. I just had a realtor. That's why I came in late. I had a realtor over maybe to try and sell the house and move into a one level place.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back to work because I'm on FMLA, and I need to go back to work, and I'm trying to outweigh the different care options, but I'm finding difficulty, long-term care versus, some type of assisted living or long-term living versus home care versus maybe daycare and splitting. It's
Wow.
it's a lot to weigh in
Wow. Yeah.
while trying to take care of my wife and do everything else too.
And while she's trying to sustain her independence and is not at all excited or interested about this kind of change discussion at all.
No, not even aware of it at all. No, she's pretty passive, which is, I guess, is not a bad thing.
It's hard on you because part of what's happened is you've lost your partner.
Yes. Oh, yes. But as far as the decision-making process, it's pretty much up to me. It's not really her decision. Yes.
Yeah. Except there'll be a part that then that's the challenge, because if you make that decision, something happens, who's going to feel guilty?
I've come across that. Yes. I
just thought I'd check in with that. I figured that would be the case. And we can tell
I've
you don't
heard-
feel guilty as much as possible. But I've got that real funny feeling that if you made the decision and something happens, just like maybe I should have left her there. It's like, no, I don't buy that. Your gut is pretty good measure of paying attention.
Yeah, there's a lot going on day in and day out. There's a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah. So with your wife, does she acknowledge she has dementia? And does she seem aware that she has a dementia, or does she just have MS, just like they keep telling her?
No, she doesn't. She's not aware of the dementia. I mean, when we mention it, she kind of recoils. And I don't like the word either, obviously, but she does know about MS, and she keeps saying that it sucks, but she doesn't really know about the extent or just the fact that she doesn't like having MS.
When she has MS, when she talks about it, is she talking more about the physical elements and the sensory elements of MS versus what do you think she's talking about?
She really doesn't discuss it much, except for the fact that she just hates being diagnosed with it. But she doesn't really acknowledge how it affects her. She doesn't seem to articulate what's going on.
It's been
whether it's
12
with,
years. Correct. I'm sorry.
no, let's go, all right,
It's
please.
been 12 years that your wife's been living with MS.
Wow.
About 10 plus, yeah, about 10 plus, yeah.
Yeah. And when the first symptoms happened, did it change her life dramatically, or was it slow?
Oh, yeah, because at first I don't think she admitted it. We had to kind of, we had to trick her into getting an MRI because she thought it was something else. She was just falling more. She lost her job. She was fired from her job. And at the time we didn't know what was going on. And she's been, I mean, she was a payroll supervisor for a large community college, and she's been doing it for years, decades. And so it was, the onset and the progression was quite sudden.
Wow. Well, that do you have the reason why she was let go from that job? Because that's pretty interesting, because there's a physical demand to that job, but there's a lot more cognitive demand to that job.
Yeah, there apparently were some poor choices, I think, that were ongoing that they had documented that came to a head, and I probably don't disagree with what had happened,
No.
but we were just not aware of what was going on at the time.
And even if they had addressed it with her, she hadn't retained it and been able to work with that data to make a change in her behavior.
She was aware there was something wrong, but she always thought it was them and her, not her, you know.
Right, right. Which is, again, that's one of the prefrontal issues, is
Yeah.
not being able to recognize another person's perspective has value.
Right.
You know, that there is something going on there. So this is what it sounds like, quite honestly, is that you're sort of stuck from the very beginning, not getting good emotional cognitive support for your wife's condition. And neither has she.
No. I think there was something that happened in the end of December that kind of changed things. I think I never really thought about it before. I've never even sought out support until recently with the current falls. I've never even thought about that part. So this is almost like new territory. But I think for the last 10 years, it was almost like being on autopilot.
Right. And you were put on autopilot because, well, it's just a symptom of MS, versus, wait a minute, her brain is changing. And there's this MS phenomena, which we will have to figure out, but we got to figure out how the brain change is going to impact the other symptoms of MS, right, that are going to impact your lives in this really amazing way, not good, amazing, really awful kind of amazing way, where you can't depend on her brain to recognize risk, danger, anything, and it will be a repetitive pattern. Right. And so modifying environment very early on is going to make more sense, because she's not going to be able to learn to be careful ever.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Right.
Nobody actually laid that out and said, wow, given her brain development of this condition, her dementia is going to make it really hard for her to learn to be careful. We probably should start talking about ways in which we should modify expectations for both of you over time.
Right. That's exactly how I perceive things. But like I said, it seems like everybody's kind of dismissing it.
Wow. 10 years.
If I can say something, Anthony, I just salute you for supporting your wife over these years, because you're facing a very, very difficult challenge, and I think you're focused on the right thing, which is safety. That's one of the first things that I focused on when I got my wife's diagnosis of dementia years ago, was how can I improve our home environment to make it safer for her? And so that's everything. The first thing I did was modify a bathroom so she had step-free access to a shower. So if you're looking for a new place, make sure that at one level you have step-free access to the shower. Yes, and Teepa has, I love telling Teepa, because Teepa's a good teacher. There are 4 F's. What are they? Let's see if I can remember them. Friendly, familiar, flexible, and forgiving.
You were so
is-
close. Functional versus flexible, but functional. It has to be able to function for her, but you got it.
Functional. Okay, I missed one. All right, then 5 F's. Okay, functional. Okay.
Jeffrey, wait, before you go
making the
forward.
environment safe, because I've focused very much on safety, and
Yeah.
just as an example, part of the reason I live where I live is because I can afford round the clock care 24 hours a day. Someone is at my wife's side, making sure she doesn't get up and trip and fall and hurt herself. Because I cannot trust her to know how to be safe.
And that
but
was a
anyways,
process. That was a process, Jeffrey. That was not a quick fix. That took time to develop that.
Oh, yes, that took a long time. And
Because she wasn't really in favor of having people. She didn't need anybody.
No.
I mean, that was ridiculous.
Exactly.
Why
My
would
wife
she
is a
need
little bit
anybody?
like yours, Anthony, and refusing to acknowledge that she had dementia. She had, I guess, what they call anosognosia, which means you don't really even acknowledge. You're incapable of recognizing
Can't
or
see it.
acknowledging that
Can't
you have
see it.
dementia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is a characteristic of dementia, where there are people who are incapable of recognizing that they have dementia, and
They're fine. Yeah.
they're fine. And then just, how do you say things are fine when they're not?
So Jeffrey,
anyways.
but the difference for you, how did you come into the diagnosis of dementia for your wife? Because she doesn't have MS. That's not what happened for her. How did you come to the diagnosis? Because that's where Anthony got, and I'm trying to think of a nice word to use, got ignored and missed. Just like, well, it's just her MS. It's like, you went in and it was a dementia, and here's what we're going to do about the dementia.
Well, I backtrack a little bit. My wife didn't have anything physical like MS. It was just vascular dementia mixed with Alzheimer's. But
yeah,
our personal relationship, she was becoming so combative and difficult that I remember saying at one point I was thinking of divorcing her. But what actually triggered it in my case, no friends or family ever commented, hey, things are a little bit different, things of that sort, because after she did get the diagnosis, a relative said, oh, I was noticing things a few years ago. And I'm like, why didn't you ever say anything? But anyways, what triggered it for me, Tipo, is actually number 45, taking the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test and boasting about it as if it were an IQ test. And then I looked into that, and I was reading these articles. I said and I looked into it, and I realized my wife could not pass 7 out of the 10 Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test questions. So I said, she's probably has dementia. Let's go through the whole process of diagnosing her for dementia. And of course, this is all happening during the beginning of the pandemic. So it was not easy to get, how do you get a CAT scan or all these appointments to get the blood work and appointments with doctors and with neurologists. And then again, as Tipa said, my wife's difficulty was, I think your wife has had her diagnosis, so it's not an issue, but she refused to go to her appointments, to the neurologist. And then I had how do I get her to go to her appointments? And I had to take her to an ophthalmologist or an eye surgeon who would just operate on her cataracts, and just so that he would tell her to go to the other doctor without telling her what it was for, she would go. But it is a process. As
it is a
said.
process.
Yes, it is
so,
a process.
Jeffrey, folks are wanting to know where you live that you can afford this. So it is not in the U.S. Let's put it that way.
Yes, I live in Colombia in South America, and I hate to admit it, I pay the equivalent of $35 US for a 12-hour home nursing care shift, and that is a nurse, not a caregiver. It's an auxiliary nurse, but it's a nurse. And I have 2 shifts. So I have, right now, I have nurses at home, 2 shifts. So 5.5 days a week. Where I am right now, we have a warm weather place on the coast that I'm trying to take advantage of. I don't know whether we'll come back here. It's a little tough for her to adjust, Tipa, now to these changes. and I'm on my own at night, but it hasn't been too bad. There are good days and there are bad days, but
There are good days, bad days. But I think what Jeffrey experiences, he decided they should stay in that space because of the resources that were available to him there. And we have people who are in Thailand or in other countries. They've decided to stay in countries or spaces where they can afford what is better quality care than they could get somewhere else. And they make that choice, not so much for themselves, but for their spouse, because otherwise, or their parent, because otherwise you couldn't afford that level of care in the US or Canada. It's just a reality there, but that's what you've opted to do. And for other people, that's, having that we're all over the world, that's a reality that we've got to sort of figure this out. And we don't have good systems in many places. And so it leaves families really desperate for finding support. Irene, you had a thought or a question?
Well, something that prompted another thought. Care, and I don't know if there's Anthony. Care is one component, keeping her safe and making sure she eats and the hygiene and all of that, and going to the doctors, and then the strategic planning that you're doing, which is wonderful. But the other part is, does she seem, I know she's indifferent, or it sucks that she has this disease, but does she seem relaxed or happy? Or does she just sit by herself? Like, does she have any activities that you do with her? Is she withdrawn completely?
She does seem, she is pretty passive. She does seem, I don't want to say happy. Well, yeah, she seems content. I don't want to say happy, but content with what's happening.
How does she spend her time, Anthony? Irene asked a good lead in, but how would you say, like, when she's awake, what does she do?
Mm-hmm.
TV. I'm her only company, really.
Wow.
She has
Okay.
some vision problems with nystagmatism.
Uh-huh.
I've taken her to a neural ophthalmologist. I don't know if that's the correct term, but she couldn't articulate what was going on, and they had trouble really diagnosing her. So I haven't been able to solve the vision problem, but I almost consider her partially blind, it seems. So she can't function with a remote. She can't do like puzzles. She can't read. She can't.
So her eye-hand coordination has been severely impacted.
I think so. I haven't really, right. She just, if you handed her a remote, she would basically just push buttons, shut the TV off by mistake, but basically TV's her only company. But right now I'm looking into like getting her, well, that's why I wanted to do the daycare for more stimulus, being around other people.
Was she previously sort of social? Did she enjoy social interaction, or was she?
Yes.
And so that's really an empty space in her life these days.
Right.
And with the lack of ability to do a lot, fine skill wise and eye coordination wise, then social becomes a way to actually find satisfaction in being alive.
It might be, but she never complains.
Right. Yeah. And that's that in and of itself could be a flattening of affect, where she has a hard time generating emotion, except when she's really, really frustrated. But otherwise, it's sort of like you're not getting a lot of emotion, because that requires neural firing. Yeah.
I have no idea what's going through her mind. I really don't.
Wow. And she doesn't have a lot of people around her that give her a chance to work on that either.
No, I think even through the MS, since the diagnosis, friends and family have distanced themselves. We've had that type of thing. So there's a few people, very few. I'm pretty much her only friend.
Wow.
Pretty much her only company at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
I
where
don't
are
think
you?
it's never really been I never thought it was an issue. Maybe it was a terrible thing, but I'd go to work and I was able to monitor her through Ring, call her several times a day, keep her engaged, and make sure she was safe. But she's never.
Yeah.
I mean, the TV could probably go off and she would sit there for 2 hours and just not complain. And even though there was nothing around or nothing to do, she would not complain about it.
So that makes it doubly hard for you, because you want more for her life then,
Yes.
but you're trying to be careful because you don't want to distress her. But at the same time, not having anything to do isn't good for anybody. It doesn't matter what's going on, because
Right.
then that
And
means
I
she's not
feel-
moving, she's not exercising, she's not getting up. And so when she does move, her risk of falls goes up dramatically because she hasn't been moving very much.
Well, right, exactly, yes. And I feel like I kind of fail her in this respect too, by doing that and not finding the right solutions for her too, you know.
No. Yeah, I think you're asking a lot of yourself. I'm just going to say that, trying to do this all by yourself. So I'm glad you came, and I'm glad you're starting to think outside this box of, just because they didn't give you what you need doesn't mean you shouldn't go looking for it. Because they did not, in my estimation, do an excellent job of supporting your wife's changes that came with their MS. But dementia is a situation where you have to do some heavy lifting early on to help people get to a new place. Otherwise, you find yourself 10 years later dealing with so much fallout from having had no reasonable support early on.
That's me now.
Yeah. And
That's
so
where I am.
unfair. It is super unfair to be in that. It's unfair to your wife, and it's unfair to you, when it could have been handled differently. And that's
believe
the
so.
culture that we believe needs to change. Not this, oh yeah, well, it's, you know, it's just dementia. It's like, it should never just be dementia. I mean, what the heck? Who thinks
Right.
that makes sense? Yeah,
Right.
well, apparently too many places. Irene?
One thing was so helpful, because you get stuck in the weeds of doing all this stuff. Teepa, thank you that you reminded me, is that this is progressive. It's not going to get better, but that you have to enjoy the moments and that relationship. And it's so easy to forget. So Anthony, I know you don't feel like there's anything there now, but it's not going to get better. So I want to make sure you take time to appreciate those moments with her, because, you know, remember that instead of, you know, what will come in the future.
I am. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
trying.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for sharing. Rachel?
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
for
you.
listening.
And we'll do some more. I think we'll be following up more with you. I think Cheryl will be following up a bit more, because there's definitely some work to be done to help you a bit more than you're getting supported right now.
And Teepa,
Thank you.
I'm not sure, Illinois, Chicago is where you're from, correct?
Ah, okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. There are resources in that area that we probably should be thinking about, of some of the folks that we might know about that way. Okay, cool. Well, we'll get back to it. Yeah, cool. Rachel, what else you've got in the bucket today?
So I know we've been getting questions in from Facebook, but I believe that Agnes sent in a question ahead of time. And so I wanted to respect her sending her question in. So I thought I'd give you just a little bit of a heads up, and then Agnes, if you want to, feel free to jump in and correct if I get off track. So I believe that her mother-in-law is in her middle 80s, and she's probably around an emerald to an amber.
Okay.
She's very nice and pleasant. She's living in a little house with her 14-year-old dog.
Okay.
Her husband died at the same age in February of last year, and she was able to continue with the routine for about 6 months. The problem is now she's forgotten that he's died. She has 3 kids. She has a daughter, and then she lost her middle son in 2006. And then her youngest son is the closest. So both daughter-in-laws and a neighbor visit her every afternoon between 12 and 6 for a couple hours to make sure that she's getting fed, the dog's taken care of, hygiene's taken care of, etc. Plus for the dog is that it helps her stay active by walking the dog. So there are a couple questions. Because she's forgotten that her husband has died, she's asking about her husband, and she's also mixing up or confusing her youngest son being her husband.
Her husband.
So
I was gonna
that's
say her son for her husband. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also have kind of when she's kind of just alone with the dog and the son is there, you can hear her saying to the dog, "Look, Dad is working in the yard," or "Dad is here, you'll be fine." So this also kind of makes it a little bit uncomfortable for the son.
Son. Yeah.
So Agnes, I
So-
hope that's kind of close. Feel free to jump in.
Yep. That's the gist of it.
Okay, so you're at a breaking point where we've got that checking in, asking about dad, thinking son is dad. The reason that's becoming, I suspect, fairly prevalent is that her brain is getting lost in time a little bit. However, what she's also feeling is lonely a lot. So what her brain is doing is forming new synapses that allow her not to feel so lonely. So when she says to the dog, dad's working in the yard, dad's right here, what she's doing, and we see this often, people in Emerald State will talk to inanimate objects or things like animals or dolls or things in the environment like parrots or, like a stuffed animal, where they'll talk to that animal. And what they're doing is self-talk. So they're talking about what they're feeling, but they're saying it about the animal. Sounds like you're really missing daddy. Well, he's in the yard. So they actually say that's a way their brain can allow them to express how they're feeling, because being able to talk about how you're feeling is sort of a thinking thing. And this is more of a conversational way of trying to address, I'm really feeling lonely. I really miss my husband. And there's that element, but there's like, oh, well, no, there he is. I see him. And my brain lets me see somebody who's similar and see them as that person because it fills in the blank space. And yeah, that could actually get pretty uncomfortable because that desire to feel lonely. And then what would you want next from your husband? What's the next thing you might want from your husband?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then
sister,
there was
yeah.
there was one time she did like hug him and kiss him on the cheek, and then the son said, my mother never kissed me on the cheek.
What is
Like,
this?
oh.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
not a son-mom relationship. This is mom mistaking son as dad relationship. And it speaks to her sense of social isolation. So how is she when the women come to visit, the daughters-in-law and friends come and visit? What happens during those times?
Mix.
Mhm.
Sometimes you mix it up, sometimes, but whenever we leave, like when we leave together,
Mhm.
then she's very mommy. She's like, oh, you make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you eat enough, make sure you know the mother thing, and then she'll do a hand kiss, fly kiss, and very motherly.
Very much.
Only when they're like separate. Yeah.
Yeah. So she likes to send you off. Oh, you kids be good. Have a good afternoon.
Yes.
You take care of yourselves. Don't do anything mommy wouldn't be like, And if you think about it, it's like she's treating you like your kids are a teenager at most, much more childlike. So she's doing some time traveling, but she also, do you get a sense that she's sort of, not in a mean way, but she's sort of glad you're leaving?
Yes. So a lot of times she'll say, oh, it's time for you probably need to go home and feed your animals and go. I'm fine here.
Yeah. Well, her problem is she doesn't know what to do with you people. I mean, you're lovely visitors, but she doesn't know what to talk about with you. She doesn't know what to engage with you. And so after you do the basics, it's sort of like, oh crap, what am I going to do with them? It's probably about time for you guys to go home because she doesn't know what to do anymore. She doesn't have a lot of interests or abilities to do things. And so I'm curious, after you leave, what does she do?
She doesn't really do, like, she lack of initiation. So she walk her dog a lot.
Yep.
So that helps. And we have the TV on with the animal shows, so that helps. She moved around the house a lot, and then
Yep.
she likes to
So she-
rearrange
So
stuff and then clean up.
she's wandering around, taking things from place to place, moving things here, moving things there. She's filling her time with sort of chit chat, but it's physical chit chat. Like it's just like a little phrase here, a little comment over there, because she really doesn't know what to do anymore with herself. And you guys are taking care of the core stuff, sort of like Anthony's figuring out how to take care of the core stuff. So the question becomes, how much longer can she sustain it? And can you all sustain it that she doesn't get herself in trouble? Because she's right now, she's going through the actions that you guys have structured in, but she doesn't really start a whole lot of things other than walking the dog on her own, other than the fiddling around.
Right. We try to arrange like evening visit, like one of our neighbor, whenever she's available, she'll come visit, like do a chit chat with her, but more social. But other than that, since she doesn't initiate anything, we unplug the stove, we turn the breaker off so she can't use that. Not much. We try to start a jigsaw puzzle, and then maybe she could finish it later on by herself, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, what happened
Not
to the
much.
puzzle pieces?
It's just the same.
Yeah. So unless you engage with her, she can't engage a whole lot other than the fiddly stuff. So she's the kind of lady that, that I'd be curious, what's her background with music or with more of the physical doing things? Like if you asked her to fold laundry with you, would she fold laundry with you?
Yes, she would, but she won't put it away. She will leave it in the black bucket.
In the basket, yeah. So if you said, hey, Mom, hey, let's go put this away, what would happen?
She'll put in the different places every time.
Yeah. So she doesn't have like the organizational skills to know where things go now. So it's basically, if she puts things away, they'll be every which way. If you were to say, hey, Mom, let's put the shirts in here. This is where I was thinking we could put them.
Oh yeah, okay. She would do things if we initiate things to do, she would do like we give her the toothbrush with the toothpaste on it, and she would continue, finish it and dry, put it away.
Yeah. So once you start a task, she sort of gets the idea of doing the task, and you may find before too long, you actually have to say, okay, Agnes, I think you got all your teeth. Here's your cup so you can rinse. You may find that you have to increase the cueing to during the task. So right now you give her the toothbrush and she does all her mouth, and then she reaches for the cup and rinses out and spits, and then rinses the toothbrush out and then puts it in the holder.
Right.
But you're right at the borderline of her more than likely needing those cues to finish the task, put the things away, then move to another task versus simply stand there at the mirror or keep brushing.
Yeah, we are aware of that because from the Gem States book that I have ordered, been studying it. So we're working on arranging more caregiver time with her.
Good.
Yeah, just the question that she always asks about. Did you see Dad today?
You're wondering if so we're going to role play that one, because that's figuring out how to answer that given all these pieces, because we have to lay out the puzzle a little bit of where is your mom, because each person who asks that can be at a different place in their dementia, and where they are really determines what should we do to be supportive of them. Because if we go the wrong direction, we could cause more distress or not really meet their need. And that's what we're really trying to do, is meet the need that she has. So she's going to say, so have you seen Dad? Where is Dad? And she sort of sounds surprised that he's not readily visible to her.
Right. She would say, did you see Dad today? Why is no one at home today? Is everybody left
Mom,
so early?
Yeah,
I
so
say,
you
oh
were
yeah.
wondering,
So
yeah,
yeah,
you're wondering where dad is. Yeah, because you expected to see him before now, huh?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I haven't
now
seen him whole morning.
you haven't seen him the whole morning. Okay, now we want to try to start being a detective, because what she's telling me is I'm looking for the other half of my partnership. I'm looking, and I'm going to give you the hint about it. I'm looking for somebody who knows what's supposed to be going on and can tell me what to do, because I have this whole day and I don't know what to do. That's the bottom line. She doesn't know how to initiate. So dad, quote unquote, would know what comes next.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, hey, mom, so you're looking for dad. You were thinking he should be here by now. Did you need him for something, or you just wondering where he was? So I've got to start getting to the place where, well, I needed to ask him about, oh, you needed to ask him something. Oh, hey, mom, I have a big favor to ask of you. Now, what we're going to do is take over the responsibility of being, quote unquote, dad. And I think it's important that she picks the word dad, because dad is the one who mom and dad tell the kids what to do. And that's what she does at the end of the visit, is tells you should go home, you should walk your dog, she should take care of you should eat something good. So she has the idea of it, but she doesn't have any sequence skills. And so what she's saying is, I don't know what to do for the day. Have you seen your dad? I thought he'd be here by now. In other words, how do I do this? It's really a question of how do I do this? And her use of dad is simply an indication I'm at a loss.
Okay, so there she has like cousins and friends. I have to tell them, so that
You have to
no
give them a
point to
schedule. So it will have to
right.
be, and you want to use that pattern that we just used about, oh, you're wondering about that. Hey,
Yeah.
mom, could you do me a big favor? Or, Mary, could you do me a big favor for just a second? Well, sure. Because she's not disagreeable. She's very agreeable.
Yes, she is. And so I have to remind her friends when we go out to lunch together, you don't have to tell her that her husband is gone.
No. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely not. Yikes. It's
I know.
actually a whole lot more helpful. We don't need her to grieve him again, because she's really looking for somebody. If they go out to lunch, what can't she figure out? What to ask for, what to order.
What to order.
Yeah, she doesn't know how to do an ordering thing anymore. So her husband could help her do the orders so she wouldn't look stupid.
Yeah, she does. She does one of the things that I have heard in one of this live Q&A, that she will say, what are you ordering? I'll order the same.
You got it. So that's why she's sort of stuck. So one of the things that would be helpful is if you guys go to routine places, like there are places she likes to go, and those are the ones you go to. If when you get a plate and she likes that kind of thing, go ahead and take a picture of a few plates and say, Mom, would you rather have this one, or this one? And actually encourage the friends to do the same. So she gets to pick, and you go, oh, hey, you know what? I took a picture of some of the things we've gotten before. Here, take a look. Which of these would you rather have? This one, or this one? And all of a sudden, she's actually feeling comfortable, and she's not going to worry so much about where's her husband, so that I have somebody who can order for me.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are doing a really nice job of acknowledging your mother's skills. And I think what you're now figuring out is, and where are the holes where we need to support a little stronger? Because the reason she's going back to the dad thing, I suspect, is because her brain doesn't know what to do with time anymore. And if you're not dad, or the person who should be in the house, you should be going home. But then again, what do I do? So it's tricky for her, because she wants to be mom, but without dad, how do I do that thing? Ugh, this is awkward. Have you seen dad? He should be here by now.
Yeah.
So it's not a grieving question. It's not a high distress question. It's how do I fill this void question?
It makes sense, but she doesn't, when she asked the question, she doesn't sound like just distressed that she
No,
needed
no.
him here now.
No. It's not a crisis yet, but it could become one if we don't start figuring this out. Because people telling her he's dead, or people saying, well, what do you want to do? Or, do you want to go out? Well, I don't know. He might be home anytime.
Right.
Because, then the distress could start simply because it's like, uh-oh, what if I'm gone and he comes? No, I should just stay here. I don't think I want to go. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Because that's not what you want. You want her to stay involved in living.
Yep. That's true. Makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else have a thought or a question for Agnes? You did a very nice job of Cheryl of helping us appreciate what was going on. Or Rachel. This one was Rachel. Sorry, Rachel. Give you credit where it's due. Nice job of setting it up so we could sort of hear sort of the backstory that y'all had worked on. Anyone else? All right. Well, Rachel, now you can shift gears. Thanks, Agnes, for sharing that and for being so willing to tell a little bit about it, because your mom's story is not an unusual story. The tricky part is how well you've managed it, to let her feel independent, but know that she can't be.
Yeah, it made me wonder actually, Tifa, about having that support person to just kind of be there to guide her in a kind way, but kind of that she can kind of tag along with, that just kind of knows and can, I'll tell you what, let's do this, or how about we put that there? And then she just has a guide that she can follow. So that just kind of made me think of that.
Yeah.
So somebody asked a question, and they're saying that their mom is late 80s as well, with mid-state Alzheimer's. So probably in an Emerald kind of place, lives with her dad, who is legally blind and on oxygen. So the question is, how can they have better phone conversations with her? Because the content is limited to chit chat, kind of like we were just talking about. She responds well to hymns and prayer, but they're kind of wondering, what else can we do?
Yeah. Oh, hey, Rachel. It's Tipa.
Tipa?
Yeah. How are you? Good or how's it going?
Well, you do what you do when it goes around, and then it's good.
It's good. Well, you do what you do, and that's good. Oh, hey, Rachel. You know what I saw the other day? A lighthouse. A lighthouse.
No.
I did.
No, when I went to one.
You have been
Did
to a
I
lot
tell
of
you
light.
there's the one, and it was really it was up there, and we went all the way up, and we got about blown away.
Oh my heavens. So you went all the way to the very top of the
I
lighthouse.
did, and we did, and then she was trying to change the the thing that we had up there, and it almost landed in the state that was next door.
Oh my heavens, it blew so hard. The wind was blowing so hard.
But we held on to it, and
but you held on and you didn't let it happen. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Oh, so the lighthouse I went to, Rachel, was black and white.
Well, the one I went to was really tall.
Was really tall.
We climbed it. It was we went all the way up, and we almost got blown away because it was really...
almost got blown away. Oh, now was that one black or you red or something else?
No, it wasn't the black one, because that's the one everybody knows about.
This was an unusual
one. But it was
one,
around there. It was around there. It was the tall
right
one.
Around there.
We went up there. We went all the way up.
You went all the way up.
And then
okay, so I'm going to
really
pause us.
Up there.
I'm going to pause. Now, my question for the listener is, do you find this irritating or satisfying? Because Rachel's giving me everything she has in this situation. Her language skills, she can't find a lot of nouns. She can't have a specific, clear, distinct, full-blown memory. But what I was able to use is enough of a word and a picture that her brain went, oh, I found the file drawer. And the file drawer she pulled open was around a lighthouse. Now, I have to let her do what she can with the lighthouse, and then I chime in to give her, so the wind blew. Now, if I know the story that Rachel has about the lighthouse, like she told it back when she was more able to tell the story, and it's one that we've heard in the
We went up to the
family.
lighthouse and it was Currituck, and my mom and I went up there. It was the first lighthouse I ever climbed, and I went up there and it was blowing so hard, and we had those old film cameras, you know, with the film, and we thought it'd be better, so we were huddled up next to the lighthouse. You know, it turned out it was windier there, and it almost landed all the way into Virginia, because you know you can see Virginia from up there.
Yes, you can. You actually can from Currituck Lighthouse. You're right.
And I got a t-shirt.
And you got a t-shirt that had it. If I know more of the story, I can fill in more of the gaps. When I don't know her story, the details of her story, because I never heard the details of it and I don't remember them. So when people are giving you their story over and over and over, my recommendation is write it down with all the detail you can hold on to. See if you can copy it word for word as they say it at some point, because there'll come a time when you've got to be able to tell the story back. So they'll be able to be with you in the story. And it's when you can say, you were at Currituck Lighthouse, yeah?
Yeah, the one that's
Currituck,
tall.
yes, in North Carolina.
Yeah, that
On the
one. And we
coast.
went up and up.
Yeah, and you're all the way to the top, and you were going to do a picture.
Well, and it almost blew blew off. Well, we
It
almost
sure
did too.
The film, yeah, the film, the camera, because you thought it was better up close. You were going to hide, and that didn't work.
It didn't work. It was much worse. It was much worse.
So this idea of going with their flow, but knowing the flow they go with, like not making stuff up. When we did it before, because I didn't know her story, if I try to fill in gaps and they're the wrong words, even when I tried, mine was black and white. Nope, not that one. That's not it. So if I don't know, it makes it harder to have these conversations. But we can do this on the phone. But I've got to get curious about, let me think back. What were the stories she told? What were some of the family stories? What were some of the young stories in her life? What were some experiences that were powerful, wonderful experiences for her? And I'll try to hook into those to see if I do the heavy lift, can she come along with the ride? And the cool part is how often that works. And it's so much better than, how was your day? Oh, it was okay. And it's like, oh, Lord, what are we going to do for the next 5 minutes? Well, what did you do? Well, you know, this and that. Oh, good. Because, or how about we sing? Well, that's good. I mean, it's fine. Singing is wonderful. But there comes a time when, oh, how about this? Row, row, row your boat
Gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Oh, do you remember the time you dreamed about going on a trip? I remember
The
it.
one I always wanted to go on.
The one you always, so we could take a song and from that song go into a memory, because by doing the song, Rachel's brain was working. And now I build on that song and go somewhere with it. So it's us moving away from thinking about conversations in the here and now, conversations that have a lot of detail and specifics, to allowing the person to engage with us where they are so they get to use all the synapses they have left. And I can cause a few of them to fire that wouldn't fire without me, because that's part of the reason we want to connect, is that we can make a difference. And that's how I can make a difference with her. I can't bring back everything that's missing, but I can cause what is still possible to pop up every now and then. And so I get a few of those. Now I have to be prepared for the ones that say, you know, the dog died. And it's like, uh-oh, that wasn't where I thought we were going. Because every now and then people's brains take a different turn. And it's that one memory stimulates this memory, and that was hooked onto this memory. I didn't know that because you didn't talk about that part before. But sure enough, there was in there. And now all of a sudden I have a new piece of data. Doesn't mean I always avoid that song or I avoid that conversation, but I'm now aware, I may not want to do that one in the evening, because that could result in a situation where it's like, oh, I wish I hadn't brought that up. Uh-oh, now what? But often it leads to more positive interactions when I let go of the desire to have a conversation like I normally would have, or all I do is just this rote thing that we go through over and over again. And I'm trying to out some new things so I stay interested, because that's actually a piece of the puzzle, is me staying interested. And it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard because you think, oh, this is going to be painful. And instead it has to be, oh, I want to go back to when we used to do vacations and see if there's anything there in that vault. So I'm going to say a Ted Williams 10-person blue and yellow tent. Boy, oh boy, was that amazing. Took an hour and a half to set it up. You may not remember that. I remember it took forever to set that sucker up.
And it said it was easy to do too.
And they said it was easy. It gave instructions. And the instructions, you want to know, I bet you don't remember what you did with those instructions after the first 45 minutes.
Did I burn them?
No, you tore them up.
Oh.
He said these, and you used a word you're not supposed to use around kids, Mom. I'm just telling you. You used one of those words and I remembered it.
Well, it was frustrating and you weren't helping any.
Frustrating. Well, that's because, we didn't, geez. So anyway, that's what we're playing, but what we're doing is hopefully role playing and demonstrating the kind of fun you can have when you're able to let go of what I want and deal with what's there. And just, this is what I got. What am I going to do with what I got? That's what I got. So, yeah.
I was wondering if another thing, I wondered if another thing that could work is if I said, Tiba, I saw something.
There you
and
go.
It made me think of you. They were black and they were little and they were jelly beans.
Licorice.
They were licorice, black licorice jelly beans.
Yes, I love black licorice jelly beans.
I cannot see those without thinking about you.
Well, that's because you should think of me when you see them and you should give me some.
Well, you know what?
What?
I got
You know
some.
they're not good for you. Did you know they're not good for you?
Do you care about that?
No.
I don't either. Let's go get some.
But they're good. I love black licorice jelly.
You know, I know why you like them.
Why?
Because you don't have to share.
That's true. Nobody likes them but me. Nobody likes them but me. But you know why I like them? Because they're good. That's why I like them.
Well, they are good. But
Yeah.
I remember when you told me I was so good, I could have 1.5 jelly beans.
Yeah, but you didn't want them.
Well, I don't know. I think I want them now.
Well, I don't have any, so I can't give you any.
Well, that's a bummer.
I know. Good job. So Rachel's looking at something that we shared together more recently, and so something she knows I like, and bringing it up. Yeah, cool. Cheryl, what were you going to bring up?
I was going to bring up that in the chat, Esther said she wishes that she could have you in her back pocket when she interacts with Mom. And I was thinking of your tiny Teepas.
Tiny Teepa in the back pocket. These people with this Lego thing. Oh my heavens. My team has a little Lego. Matthew probably has it with him in a little bit. Who knows what he'll do. But it's a tiny Lego, and they colored its hair from yellow to gray, because the little Lego has colored ponytail, but it's blonde. And of course, they've colored it gray now with a marker to make it look like me. And I go all over the place. I'm drinking beer in places, eating pieces of licorice. Let's see. Oh, there I am.
There's Tiny Teepa.
There's Tiny Teepa having coffee. She spent a lot more time on her hair than I do. I can tell you that. But yeah, they mess with me like that. But we're glad to be here in your back pocket every now and then. So we do our best to get in people's back pockets, and like sort of we're back there. So get in your brain to go, ooh, I've got an idea. So we're the idea people, or the heart people behind sometimes. All right, we have time for maybe one more short one, Rachel.
Okay. So someone was saying that in the UK, many things are dismissed if they're not Alzheimer's. So they're thinking there's evidence of vascular damage, but also suspecting mixed with Lewy body, as
Okay.
the presentation of symptoms seem to fit that. But I'm guessing that there's some frustration about it kind of just being dismissed. So we're kind of back to like what Anthony kind of brought
Yeah.
up. What do you do
Right.
when it's just dismissed?
We've got to look elsewhere. It's sort of like when you have a family member that you've asked to help out and it's not happening. It's like you keep going back. You could sort of keep going, or you could just say, you know what, I'm going to look elsewhere. Because frankly, if this isn't working, it isn't working. I don't want to spend more energy on it. And so finding another space, another place, another resource to substitute. We're big into substitution, not subtraction. I'm not saying I'll never work with that group again. However, I will say, you know what, for right now, this is not working for me, and it's not working for my person. I want to really focus in on the vascular and Lewy body issues that we're having, because I need help with those issues. And I feel like because it's not Alzheimer's related, I'm not getting that. And I will tell you that there are way too many places that see Alzheimer's as being 70 to 80% of all dementias. And that's simply not the case. It's only about 50, maybe 60% of all dementias involve some Alzheimer's, but there's often another partner in the Alzheimer's, and vascular is a big partner. We also have Lewy body plus Alzheimer's, and we have Lewy body plus frontal. I mean, there are so many combos and different dementias. We've got to get out of this space as a support system that keeps thinking Alzheimer's, 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 and instead think dementia umbrella. What lobes of the brain are working, how, and what lobes of the brain are not working, so we can get the right support in place for the person and the person they're supporting and being supported by. And we could look a little at what might a progression look like for this particular form, and what could we do in preparation without getting swamped by it. But what are things we need to focus in on that are high priorities for the next probable thing that could happen and will more than likely happen given this. So with Lewy body, I want people to think about, okay, right now, 5 symptoms, how many of them are present? And if you don't have some of them, that's terrific, but be aware they could develop. If you have ones that are outside of that, well, we could look and see if it still fits in Lewy body or if it belongs in another bucket. But if you're having delusional thinking and you're confabulating things, let's talk about some of the confabulation you're having and how that you're coping with that. If we're having issues with visual problems where you're seeing things that they're not there for me and they're frustrating for you, or they're causing you to want to do something, let's figure that out. Because I think by not addressing the very things that you find distressing or frustrating or hard to work with, we're belittling both the person who's offering support and the person who's living with the condition by not having it match up to some norm. I'm not sure that doesn't make sense to me. And that's not what I do.
Thinking about visual disturbances and people seeing things that we're not seeing. Somebody asked, what can I do or say when my mom sees people that scare her?
Wow. So those guys there, now you see them, and could you tell me a little, what exactly are they doing or how are they looking, Mom, that you're worried about? Tell me more about that.
Well, you see them, they're right over there, and they're getting into the things that they're not supposed to be getting into. And look, see, he's right over there. He's spying on us. He's spying on us right there. See, he's looking right over there. He's looking at us.
Seeing him look over this way, and you see them looking at us
right over there,
watching us. Mom, I'm going to ask you for a big favor. I know you're worried about him. I want us to move away from here right now. This doesn't feel like a good place for us to be right now.
But he's watching us, and I don't know what he's going to do.
Well, let's get out of here. Let's go in the other place.
He's going to come after us. He's going to come after us.
You're afraid he was going to come after us. Well, Mom, here, you know, I mean, Mom, I hate this. I'm not seeing him where you're seeing him.
He's right there. See him?
So
He's
you see
right
him
there.
and you're really
He's
worried
looking
about
at
him.
you.
He's looking
right
at me
there.
right now.
We need to do something. We need
You
to do
need to
something. You
quit
need to go
looking
and
at me.
you need
This
to call
needs
the
to
police.
stop.
You
Stop
need to
it.
call the
Stop.
police.
I should
Call
call the
911.
police. Okay, you want me to call for help?
Call 911 and tell him he's right over there. And
I
I'll
need
keep
to
a
get
watch
some
on him.
help, and we need to get out of here, and we need to get this dealt with.
We need to get this dealt with.
We need
So
to
you
get this dealt with. All right, well, here's what I'm gonna ask, Mom. You want me to dial 911? I want you to come in the other room with me right now. I want to stand in here right here. I want us to move into the other room to do anything. Come on, we gotta get out
you
of
gotta
here.
hurry.
I hear you. Come on, get out of here first with me. I want us out of here.
But what if he,
Come on, we'll lock the door. We're gonna lock the door in the other room, but I want us out of here.
We gotta lock the door. We'll go lock
We're
the
gonna
door.
lock the door. Come on, we're gonna lock the door.
Well, we're gonna lock the door, but what is he doing there?
We're gonna find out, but
He
right
might be
now. we
lighting
gotta
a
get some-
fire. He might, or maybe there's some kids there
You're
that
really
he's
worried about him. You're
yeah,
really
I-
worried
he's
about
not.
it.
He's up to no
Hey,
good.
Mom,
He's
Mom.
What?
Take a
Just-
breath with me.
but he's doing the thing that he's
I
not
hear you.
supposed
Look
to
at
be
me,
doing,
Mom.
and he's coming
Look at
after
me.
us.
Look at me. Breathe with me 3 times. Come on, breathe with me, Mom. Take a deep one. Deep one. Come on. Now blow out. Blow out with me, Mom. You're blow out. You're not blowing out. Blow out with me. Blow it out. All the way out. Yeah, do it again. Blow it out all the way. So, people around, what did I finally get her to look at?
You.
Me. We needed a substitute. Because as long as she was looking out there, her brain was messing with her. Man, her brain was building this monster out there. And then what was he going to do? He might do this, he might do that. She was so engaged with that visual image that she had floating in her brain. Where it might have started is a TV image that was about something that was happening in a whole nother part of the world. Might have been a TV program. It might have been a conversation that she heard that triggered her brain with Lewy body, with this visual thing that popped up, and it started to escalate and scroll, and it was really dangerous for her. And so what I'm doing is and what I'm going to be doing is trying to figure out how can I get her to a place of less fear and terror and less discomfort. And so I used a variety of strategies. What ultimately worked with Rachel is off that visual image. After I said, let's get out of here. We got to get out of here. We got to get to a safe place. We're going to lock the door. I'll do the report. I'll do the report. I'll do the call, but we got to get out of here first. Look at me. And it was the look at me that broke the cycle for Rachel. Each person will be unique, but what all of a sudden, who was taking charge of the situation?
You.
Me. And when Rachel felt like I was in charge and I wasn't doing anything dangerous, I was doing something was like powerful. And then I could get her to breathe with me, because what I noticed was she wasn't breathing. And that's not uncommon. When fear enters in, the amount of adrenaline and the amount of cortisol that's floating around, I've got to bring that level down a little bit so that we can get to some other situation. And so I got loud because she was going fast. She was like a choo-choo train on a track, and I had to put the brakes on the train. And so when I got loud, I said, look at me. The conductor slammed the brakes, and all of a sudden she let go of that because she had to pay attention to me, because I became something more in the immediate environment, and I was worth looking at. And then we were able to move out of that space for right then. What I want to watch is, can I cover the windows much earlier? Can I really watch what's on the TV? Can I pay attention to the conversations going on around? Do I want to notice things? Because there's risk that if I don't notice things, she does. And when we get into patterns or routines, I've got to figure out that it's a pattern or routine, and I want to reverse it or move out of it, because otherwise I don't want to do this every night. This will wear us out. So finding, what can I do about that space? What can I do about that situation? What can I do about her stress level? What is she eating? What is she drinking? Part of that. Is she not eating much, not drinking much, or is she doing a fair amount of it? And that's part of the problem. So lots to consider. Lewy body is that tricky thing, but well worth attention, and certainly not something to like, well, it's not Alzheimer's and you just have to use meds. It's like, good luck with that. All those meds that can be used can also be dangerous with Lewy body. And that's the problem. It's not a free ride. It's risk. There's risk associated. So there we are. All right, everybody.
We're out of time.
We are. I hate it. But what we want to do is be present. So if you have any questions that we didn't get to, concerns that we haven't addressed, please get up with our consults at tpasnow.com, or you can follow up with dps@tpasnow.com or ATA, Ask TIPA Anything at tpasnow.com, and we'll do our very best to get back with you. Sometimes we use time with TIPA in the mornings, and sometimes we'll use Courageous Conversations, and sometimes we'll do blogs. It all depends on, and sometimes we just do consults. It all depends on what's helpful to folks as they work on. Matthew, thanks for being out there in YouTube land. Thanks for everybody contributing and being part of our evening this day, or morning, depending on where you are. And we'll see you again next month. Take care, everybody.